The Orioles don't have the pitching staff nor the batting lineup to compete with the Yankees. Their pitching staff is just going to overmatch them. So I have the Orioles in 4, but I think it'll be a fantastic series to watch.
I think the Yankees are just going to overpower them. For Jake Gaden, I'm Tyler Bell. Back to you guys at the desk.
All right, welcome back. Now we're going to discuss Manager of the Year. Guys, surprising teams in both leagues. We'll start with the NL. Who do you guys have?
I have the St. Louis Cardinals. I know a lot of people want to give it to Davey Johnson out there in Washington, but I think the job that Mike Matheny did with those Cardinals is just absolutely amazing. They lost Tony La Russa, lost Albert Pujols, arguably one of the best hitters in baseball, and they still managed to pull it out. They went 50-31 at home, and I think that's key. He was able to win the games that they were supposed to. He had everybody on that team hitting. Multiple people hitting over 300, won that second wild card spot, and I just think that he did a phenomenal job with that team, given what they lost.
I do like that Mike Matheny pick, and I was hoping somebody would say it, but the only thing I don't like is that he wasn't able to close it against the Reds. If he would have closed it, I would have for sure said him, but like you mentioned, a couple people like Davey Johnson, I personally like Davey Johnson. I'm a big supporter of him. He had a 98 wins this season. The Nationals led the league in run differential at a plus 133, and then on top of that, they were one of 3 teams to hold their opponents under 600 total runs this season because of that pitching dominance that he was able to bring in. It was 2 guys standing up top. It was for sure Strasburg, and it was for sure Gio Gonzalez. But then they had to kind of dig deep, and they look at the Edwin Jackson. They needed to see who they were going to get their support from. And Davey Johnson definitely coached this team because they weren't on talent. They were there, but they might not have been in their prime yet.
Yeah, I mean, the array of arms that he had in that rotation in the bullpen to deal with. And the injuries. Let's not forget, this team has been stricken with injuries all year long. And they just continue to win. They continue to win. And that's not an easy division. The Phillies were hurt. The Braves were hurt. But they got to still play those teams.
Yeah.
And they won those games. So I do agree. I do think Davey Johnson, especially the Nationals, to say the Nationals are in the playoffs, that manager has to
With
be
the
manager
best
of the year.
record.
Yes, absolutely. And to have the best record. All right, so now AL. Again, a little bit of a showdown. Buck Showalter with the Orioles and Bob Melvin with the A's. I assume both of you have one of those guys. Who do you guys have?
I have Bob Melvin out there in Oakland. I think he just did a phenomenal job with this team. To come out and win the AL West is just absolutely amazing. Last year they finished 22 games back, and this year they win it over the Rangers, over the Angels, teams that were supposed to be World Series contending teams. So I just got to get my hats off to Bob Melvin and that team. Just absolutely amazing. They were in every game. Again, this team was also 50-31 at home, so he did it where he needed to in front of his home crowd. I think that they're going to be a scary team in the playoffs.
Sorry, Lou, I'm siding with Gabe. If you look at it, it has to be Bob Melvin. Showalter did not let his team win the AL East. And Melvin, if you look at it, they had 5 starters down the stretch that were all rookies. Jared Parker, Daniel Straisley, Travis Blakely, Tommy Malone, A.J. Griffin. That led them, along with Yoenis Cespedes, another rookie. So it has to go to them. And they had to sweep the Rangers to win it, to end it. That's impressive.
Absolutely, I totally agree. They looked the team, and it wasn't just it was a Rangers that if the Rangers won, they would have won the division. So they looked them in the eye, and they swept them, and they took the division from the Rangers.
That's good coaching.
And Bob Melvin is Manager of the Year. So that'll do it for the Manager of the Year. Now we're going to send it over to Josh Franz and Allison Cummings, who have a recap of the 2012 Arizona Diamondbacks.
Hello and welcome to the D-backs season recap. I'm Josh Franz, joined with Allison Cummings. We're going to go through the D-backs season and say where they were good, where they were bad, and give them their grades for the year. Let's start out with pitching. How were they this year?
Ooh, pitching. You know what? I think pitching was the main problem for the D-backs this season. Looking at the average ERA, it was 3.97, and that's not a good ERA. That's about bullpen material. And when you want to come out with wins, that's not something you should do. And another thing to look more into, comparing to the Giants, their ERA was 3.68. Much better, and they had Tim Lincecum, who was not consistent at 5.18. Another thing also, the San Francisco Giants, they had more base on balls. Okay, but the Diamondbacks, they had more runs and more hits against them. And you know what that means? They weren't finding the strike zone, they were leaving the pitches hanging, and you can't do it.
All right, I'm going to give them a C for my grade for pitching. They had a team ERA of 3.95, a team whip of 1.29. Both numbers were 9th out of 16 teams in the National League. Both were 3rd in the NL West, so right in the middle in both categories. So I'm going to split it, give them an average grade of a C. Let's move on to fielding. What grade do you give them?
Right. For fielding, much better. I would give them a B. They only had 89 errors on the season. That's a fantastic number. I mean, you want to see that from a team. But again, the pitching is what killed them. They could be making putouts. They could be fielding everything properly. But it all comes down to pitching. How many runs are given up? How many base on balls?
I'm going to give them an A+ for fielding. They had the second best fielding percentage in the National League, and tied for the second fewest errors in the National League with 89, like you said. Both at the very best for the National League. I'm giving them an A+. Now let's move on to hitting. What grade do you have for them there?
For hitting, I'm going to go ahead and give them a C. A C+, a relatively high C. Looking at all of their batting averages, nothing really stood out to me. You know, the average batting average was about 259, and that's not exactly impressive. San Francisco, much higher. They had Melky Cabrera producing for them. They had Buster Posey producing for them. Buster Posey, 336 average. No one from the Diamondbacks really stepped up and took charge, and that's why, for me, I'm going to go ahead with a C+.
Okay, I'm going to give them a B for hitting. They had the 6th best team batting average in the National League with 259. They were also 6th in hits in the National League with 1,409. Both numbers that are toward the top, but not at the top. That's why I give them a B. Now, overall for the division, overall for the year, what's your grade for them?
I'm going to go ahead, Josh, and give them a B. I felt that they were consistent through the whole year, but again, no one really stepped up. They didn't really prove they want it. They didn't want it hard enough. They didn't work for it hard enough. Next year, they're going to have to find the strike zone, and they're going to have to produce. They're going to have to put up numbers if they want to win.
Okay, I'm going to give them a D for the season from me. They finished 3rd in the NL West. Expectations were for them to finish 1st in the NL West because they won the division last year, so they just weren't able to do what they wanted to do this year. So I'm giving them a D. That'll do it for the D-backs season recap. For Allison Cummings, I'm Josh Franz.
All right, here we go, guys. Last award on the docket for us, the MVP. We'll start with the NL MVP. Who do you guys have?
I have Buster Posey, actually, out there in San Francisco. I think he was able to be the catalyst of that team as soon as Melky Cabrera was suspended. In September, he hit 370, or in August and September, he hit 371 in both months with 10 home runs and 39 RBIs. I think as soon as Melky went down, he kind of picked up his game and was able to carry him down the stretch to a division title. On the season, he had 24 home runs and 103 RBIs with batting .336, winning the batting title as a catcher. Absolutely impressive. I didn't think he was going to be able to come back from the horrific leg injury, and he did impressively, so I have to give it to Buster Posey.
Okay, well, that's interesting because I only had 5 home runs that Posey hit out of his 24 without Melky Cabrera. So maybe a little bit of stat check there as well. I do agree with Posey. I like Posey a lot. I think he's going to win it. But just to support Ryan Braun, he definitely deserves to be in this mix for the stats he did. 320, 41 home runs, 112 RBI, and he had 30 more runs than Posey, and he had 30 stolen bases. This is a team that the Brewers were not mathematically eliminated until about 2.5 weeks ago. This is a team that came back from basically the graveyard and made a showing. Alongside him, here's the other thing. Can you guys mention 4 of the Brewers besides Ryan Braun?
Corey Hart.
Ramos Ramirez behind him.
I was going to say, can you name 4 of the Giants? But I will say, Posey, I agree with Posey, and you went all offensive statistics. Most valuable player, let's talk about defense.
Absolutely.
Solidified himself as probably the best defensive catcher in the NL. 2 pass balls. That's the least in the NL. 26 wild pitches, ranked 2nd in the major leagues, and threw out 38 base stealers. That's best in the league. So we're talking offensive stats. Those are defensive stats. I think it's no question Buster Posey is MVP of the National League. Now, feels like UFC 200 when we say AL MVP. Is it Mike Trout or is it Miguel Cabrera? Who do you guys have?
Ding, ding, ding. I got Miguel Cabrera out there in Detroit. I think anybody who wins the Triple Crown, you just kind of have to give it to him. We haven't seen it in 45 years. Yes, Mike Trout had an unbelievable season, but if somebody wins the Triple Crown, I think that you have to give it to Miguel Cabrera. I think maybe if Trout had edged him out in the batting title and taken the Triple Crown away from him through the batting title, then maybe he gets it. But Miguel Cabrera was just awesome all season. He hit 10 home runs and 27 RBIs in September alone, helping them win that division title. So I just have to give it to Miguel Cabrera.
I'm sorry, Trout fans, but I have to go with the same thing. Just like you mentioned, if you haven't won it in 45 years, the first time, it has to go to Miguel Cabrera. on a team that's not very pitching oriented besides Justin Verlander, had to rely a lot on the offense. That was Prince Fielder, but mainly Miguel Cabrera stepping up, playing that big role. His stats are phenomenal, although I do think that Trout should be in the mix.
You know what? When you say most valuable, you need to go down the stretch and play well. And I have stats here since August 1st. Miguel Cabrera, 343 batting average, 42 runs, 19 home runs, 52 RBIs. Trout, 274, 49 runs, 12 homers, 17 stolen bases.
Good stat. And he couldn't help his team to the playoffs.
Exactly. The last 2 months, he didn't play as well as the first 3 months.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up costing him a couple of games. If he's the leader, he's got to be there towards the end if he wants to be most valuable. And I think when you win the Triple Crown first time since 1967, you're MVP.
He's in his 20s. He's got time.
Exactly. Well, that'll do it for the SDSN Playoff Special. Be sure to check us out next week as we'll have a full recap of ASU's game against Colorado and an extensive preview of their showdown with the Oregon Ducks. For Nick Merrick and Gabe Cordova-Hawthorne, I'm Louis Vertone. We'll see you next week.